Hi guys, John here, Microaces. Welcome to Microaces Workshop, part 6 of the Percee build. The last stage, part 5, we got to put the nacelles onto the wing stubs on the fuselage. Let's just get down onto the billboard and we'll take a look. There we go. There she is. And you can see I've already been busy. I've also faired in the wing to the fuselage and faired in the nacelle to the wing. This episode is about fairings. So I've neatly left the other side unfaired so we can go through the process. It's a little bit different, a little bit new as this entire build is, but this requires a little bit of finessing. We're as you can see, if we take a look at the fairing here, we've got some interesting curves going on here, and we're creating these interesting curves from very flat pieces of Tyvek material. So there's a few techniques and bits of advice that I can give that'll hopefully make the whole process a lot easier to do. Hopefully I'll be able to demonstrate it well to you. We'll only find out if we go ahead and do it, won't we? So the first thing we're going to do is add a strengthening strip to the inside of the main wing fairing. And it gets positioned so that roughly you've got an equal distance around the material of overlap. So the first thing I'm going to do is add some glue to that inner part, a very thin smear. There we go. All over, and then to guarantee we've got a overall coverage, I'm just going to add an extra smearing of it using my finger. It also obviously thins out the glue too, makes it very tacky. You can feel it drying out as you're pushing it around. And as I've said before, the Tyvek seems to work best when the Yoo-hoo has dried almost completely and we bring it together. Otherwise, I've seen in certain areas there have been little reactions to the Yoo-hoo. I don't know why, but it might not be that at all. But we'll see. This seems to reduce the amount of distortion that you get when you're using the Tyvek. So let's press on anyway. Press on. So just making sure that overlap is pretty equidistant all the way around. Doesn't matter if it's not exact. Just make sure we have, and then press firmly. Make sure I don't try not to do that. Try not to do that, but seems like we've got away with it. If you missed that, it bunched up as I was rubbing the material down. Now there's a little bit of excess glue there, but that's all right because that's going to be on the inside. It's not going to be seen, so I'm not going to worry about it. Right, before we turn these tabs down, we're going to start shaping this part, and we're trying to get a sort of a scalloped feel to it all the way up. So I'm using a paintbrush handle, thin end. There's not much difference between thin and thick, but I'm just pushing it into the material and rolling it around. And as this piece fans out here, I'm changing the angle of the paintbrush, as you can see, and also trying to get a little bit of a curve at the tip of the material. Okay. So there we go. We've got a bit of a curve to it now, as you can see. So now I'm going to fold down the tabs. There we go. And then I'm going to offer this part up just so I can get an idea of where it's going to sit. So that curve there forms into that area. There you can see on the fuselage there are indicated areas where this should sit. So that's slotting in there, and then that will push down onto the side of the fuselage there. So in fact what we're going to do is we're going to fix this area here. These tabs obviously fan down onto this existing piece of Tyvek that flares out to the wing. We're going to attach this area first down onto there, and then once we feel that's secure, then we're going to stretch that over the rest of the junction between the wing and fuselage. But what we are going to do is make sure that there's plenty of glue on this part, but we're going to allow the glue to completely dry out before we attach it. So I'm going to put a relatively generous amount on the tabs, remembering that obviously the thicker we make it, the longer it takes to set. Then this overlap we can use as a guide to where we add our glue. So I'm literally just smearing the glue on the outstanding edge, like so. Now one of the reasons we let it dry completely is that when we're actually laying this down, the edges will be touching the fuselage as we put it in place, and obviously if we've got wet glue that's going to leave a mark. So we're trying to avoid that. So I've got my glue all the way around there, and now I'm going to add some more glue to the areas that will benefit from it. So a little on the curve of the underside of the wing, and also I'm going to put some where the tip of the fairing will come to rest, and then we'll leave that to dry. Whilst that is drying, we'll prepare the front fairing. That's a fairly easy part to shape. Literally just create a curve like so. You can see that'll sit at the front of the wing there, like so. And then we're going to turn in the tabs once again. This is all quite fun. It's very paper modelling, this is, all these tabs. There we go. As you can see there, they all close up together, and that'll be a surface that we attach to the fuselage when the time comes. So we'll set that to one side. We won't apply any. We will be applying glue to that part, but we won't do it just yet. We'll we'll get our other main fairing on first. And then we've got this little part to attach, and once again we can shape this just by using our paintbrush, like so, and then it's almost in the shape it needs to be to just sit on there. So whilst that's still drying, we'll just offer it up to make sure that we're going over the top of those little side pieces that we attached during the making of the nacelle. You can see that will just sit neatly there and attached to the wing here. And what we'll do is, whilst we're here, I'm just going to add a thread of glue around the curved area that's going to come in contact with the wing, like so, and a little where it's going to attach to the sides. Then I'm going to put that to one side. I'm also going to add just a little drop at the side there, up over the top, and then just a little more on the other side. And then we can leave that once again to dry out. Okay, so how's this doing? Yeah, that seems it's not coming off on my fingers, so let's give it a go. Tweezers can be helpful. Have them to hand for this step. My glue's not particularly dry on the edge there. Okay, well, let's leave that for now, and I'll just pause you until we're ready to go. Okay, little drying time has passed, miraculously. So we are now going to attempt to get our fairing in place here. It may all go quiet for some substantial time whilst I fettle and fiddle, because the first one went on an absolute dream. Actually, this isn't looking so bad. It's just when the two glues come together, and especially when they're dry, they're hard to maneuver because they want to just bond together where they are. I'm going to detach that and try again. A little bit further up this time. In fact, I'm going to just remove a little bit of the 2mm foam. It seems to be getting in the way a little. It's gone. See if that makes a big difference. Bring these two surfaces together along their respective edges, if at all possible. Use pinching as well. Okay, so we're at this stage now where this part is all hopefully bonded together. Now I'm going to take my tweezers and just pull that down into position. Okay, let's see if we can manhandle that down then. It seems to be going down okay. Fairly happy with the position. We've got a little bit of gapping here and here, but that's okay. That's going to go down, no problem. A little bit of lifting at the back here. Just draw that down. Make sure that sticks. Don't forget we've got plenty of glue the other side of this part. It's just dry, so it's sort of acting almost like a sellotape, if you like, or you don't call it sellotape in America, do you? You call it Scotch tape. Okay. So all I'm going to do now is encourage the sides of this material to stick to the fuselage. In fact, I'm going to just a slight repositioning. Okay. And to do that, I'm actually going to use the paintbrush handle again. Just run that with some pressure against the edges that have been gummed. And they should settle down nicely onto the fuselage and the wing surface. So, and it also helps to shape the part too, so you get that lovely sort of complex curve. It's working very nicely. I'm also using the brush, just the hard edge, to burnish these parts together. Take a closer look. Just encourage everything. I'm just going to turn that edge in. This is the beauty of Tyvek, is it can be manipulated in lots of different directions. It can be encouraged. Because it's basically so thin, a lot thinner than the 1mm foam. Just encourage that down a little bit further. There we go. So there is a bit of sort of fettling and fiddling, but it should make a good fit. Obviously, make sure it's nice and firmly attached at the front there. You can also, just for extra security, just use the back edge of the knife to push material down as well. You might find this creates a soft line as well, which doesn't look too bad. Looks like it could be a sort of a rivet line or similar. Just make sure that there's a little bit more surface area in contact with the surfaces making contact with. I might do that on the other side too. Don't think I did that there. Go. Fantastic. Well, I'm pretty happy with how that's gone down. Certainly makes a nice junction between the vertical and horizontal planes. So now we can move on to adding our little fairing here. Now the glue has dried, and here you are trusting your designer, your aircraft designer, to have measured this correctly. So I'm just starting on the outside, and actually if you start on the outside and make sure the join looks good, it's not so important on the inside. Don't tell the judges. There we go. 1/4 millimetre out. Oh well. So, and once again, of course, we gummed underneath there, so I can just push that down, and it should make contact with the wing, and I can use a bit of pressure. I could use my knife just to make sure that all comes into contact. Press that right, it's just, there we go, lovely. Oh, what a lovely fit. It's not such a lovely fit. That's probably just me. A little bit, but not too bad. And it's all looks much nicer now. It's all faired into the to the wing. Right. The last bit we've got to do, of course, is get our front piece on just there, which is always very exciting. This is probably the fiddliest bit of the build. Now, I'm going to add some glue to all of these little tabs here. And then we're going to let it dry out as per our usual technique. I'm also going to add a little bit to the edge as well. Now, that requires the use of some tweezers. And a delicate touch. And then this actually overlaps with the main fairing that we've put on, so I'll add some there and then just set that to one side to dry off, and then we'll set about attaching it, and I'll show you the best I can how that's done. Be back in a sec. Okay, time for finessing. Let's get this little piece on. I'm going to go with tweezers to start off with, see how we go. And get it into position. There's as you can see, the tabs start shy of the rear end of this part, and that gives you your overlap. So that should. Okay, let's go with tweezers and finger and thumb. Good, and just push that down into place. Good. So that's matched up top and bottom with the main fairing, and the overlap is where it's supposed to be. So now it's all about pulling this around the leading edge of the wing and bringing that point in as close to the fuselage as possible, and show you at the same time. using the tweezers to help fold in the material too. And there we go. We've kind of formed a little cone shape. It flares out the bottom of the wing. You can see, and then I can just use all the tools available to me to push that down onto, get that glue on those tabs down onto the side of the fuselage. There. And this paintbrush has come in really handy, and not a bristle has touched the aircraft. So, there we go. Our fairing is complete, and it really makes the aircraft look the part. Right. Let's move on to the tail feathers. Hi chaps. A few days have gone by since recording the assembly of the winglets and putting the nacelles, the nacelles on, and the wing fillets. I started shooting a video creating the rest of the tail feathers. Unfortunately, the audio was utterly peculiar. I can only assume that it was a connection issue, because I unplugged everything and replugged it in. I haven't got that far though, but I thought I'd warn you. I've taken a few steps ahead of where I was. So let me just explain what I've done. I've created the vertical stabilizer. It's a fairly simple process. I'm sorry I can't show you, but the audio is very, very weird. If I can do something with it, I'll try. But essentially, this comes in, is folded out like so, and it's scored, and you sand the tip here, and then you bring it together. And one of the tricks that I use when I bring it together is that I will glue, or I'll pinch the tip together first and let that dry, and then push everything in like so, and that lessens the white edge on top. The one thing I haven't done actually is just go around with my fingernail to press it home even further. Now obviously white showing on this mainly white aircraft is not an issue, but with the militaire, it's obviously got camouflage and markings and all sorts that come up to the tip of the vertical stabilizer. So so this technique is worth doing, certainly for that model. Also, when I was gluing it, I've avoided inside here gluing this area here, because we've got some hinges to poke into in between the two halves. So that was that part that I did. And then the elevator. I'm trying to think what it was called then. Brain's gone to mush. Now this is a little more sophisticated in putting together. Firstly, there's quite a bit of sanding to do, just to taper down to the trailing edge, like so. It's not absolutely necessary that you do that, but obviously what it does is it removes white edges again on this kit. Not a big deal, and also there may be some aerodynamic advantage to having the taper on the trailing edge. Obviously on the full-size aircraft it certainly is. Whether it's as effective on a smaller scale aircraft is to be argued, but The other thing, we've got the carbon fibre strip. It's a 3mm by 0.4mm strip, which reduces the twist, because obviously we've only got control horn on the one side of the assembly, and what we don't want is obviously just the one side flipping up and down and the other side lagging behind, because obviously that'll create an aerodynamic twist to the aircraft. And obviously we've also got hinges that have been put in place. Now, when you get your elevator part out of the sprue, you'll notice that there is a score line down the middle, and then there are 4 holes also cut through that score, and that's the position where these little these are actually plastic. It's one of the plastic sprue, plastic hinges, which is a little bit different from our normal process of having stickers. But obviously on the other aircraft that we've done, we haven't done a double-sided, 2 1mm parts sandwiched together. So this gives us the opportunity to put the hinge within the structure rather than on one side of the structure. And we brought all that together. I made the mistake of, when I was sanding, I went a little bit too aggressive, and I split one of these elements off the whole structure, but disaster averted, because the carbon fibre strip, obviously you glue everything to that essentially. So we're back to square one. So I've got those 2 parts ready. The next part that I'm going to prepare is the rudder, and so we'll crack on and do that. I'm just using my parts box here, my electronics box, as a stage on which I can sand. I'd usually do it to the edge of the board, but obviously that's out of shot, and the reason that's out of shot is my tummy gets in and you don't want to see that. It's not pleasant. So anyway, we're going to, I'm actually marking these with a light pencil mark, so I can sort of judge quite well how the sanding is going. Obviously we want to make it as even as possible on both sides. So just going like that. This, once again, the instruction manual should have this all in, the sanding and beveling instructions. So I'm going to crack on with this with my normal technique of just sort of swipe it. Sometimes I'll go like that, just very gently, but I'll crack on with that, and when I'm done, I'll come back to you and we'll carry on. So there we go. I've sanded down, so most of my pencil mark has been removed. With all of the foam dust. And now we've got some parts to fix to. Let's get rid of the box. There we go. Pop it over there. So what you'll see in the rudder part is that you've got a score line down the center. Obviously that allows us to fold the part over, but you've also got 3 cuts as well, and 2 of those cuts are for the hinges. Well, actually the 3 are for the hinges, but 2 are for these little lozenge shaped hinges here and here. And they literally just sit in there, and the hinge line should be about 0.5mm in front of the leading edge of the rudder, like so. And then obviously we'll pop these into the vertical stabilizer. So the other part that goes on is actually the tail wheel, which wraps itself around like so. But we'll put that on once we've got this glued together. So I'm actually just going to glue in those little hinges first off. Just add a little glue on the inside of the rudder. Let's just pick them up, pop them in. So we did before. Just making sure that hinge line is just a ½ mil in front of the leading edge. So make sure they're glued on, and then I'm just going to put some glue on the inside of the part so we can then bring it all together. Obviously, getting glued to the trailing edge is paramount, but obviously we don't want it too thick, so when we squeeze everything together we don't get a whole load of glue coming out. I'm just going to put a very, very thin smear on the other side too, just to make sure we get good bond. Like so. Now what I have done here, which is a bit of a mistake, is glue down here, and in fact I want to keep this area clear of glue. The reason being is that on the actual fuselage itself we've got our it's quite a big hinge. The reason it's so big is obviously we've got the tail wheel as well on the rudder, so it needs to have a fairly substantial hold on the fuselage, and that needs to push into the rudder itself. So just put that there. I'm going to just use my finger to remove what I can, and then I'm going to use a little lighter fluid just to finish the job without getting too messy. So hopefully that won't glue together. If it does, not the end of the world. I can obviously just put the scalpel in there and wiggle it around a bit. So anyway, actually that seems like the glue's it's pretty glue free. So let's just bring the whole part together. And we can push down our trailing edge, and I'm going to flip it over and do the same so we get it nice and even. And now we have our rudder with a nice taper towards the rear. Okay. Now on your tail wheel, you should have two scores running down, which actually also have a fairly large hole in them, which allows that larger hinge on the fuselage to push through, and it literally sits on the tail, on the rudder I should say, like so, and then the two halves with the actual representation of the tail wheel on come together, and you glue in situ like so. So my part during the build process of the militaire, I noticed that the hole was not big enough for the large hinge to go through. So I've made some modifications to the kits that you get so that it will, but obviously both the debonair and the militaire were printed out and cut before that adjustment could be made. So I've cut it myself, not particularly brilliantly. As you can see, I've managed to cut away the whole of the top part there, but still usable. So what I'm going to do is just add a little glue to either side. Obviously, each side comes into contact with the side of the rudder itself. And then I'm just going to apply a thin layer to one side of the tail wheel, like so. And then I'm just going to bring the two parts of the tail wheel together just to transfer some glue over onto the other side. Have a practice of lining them up. Drag them apart again. Get rid of any of the string. Get rid of any glue on myself. And then you'll notice there's a slot on the port side that needs to be lined up, and that's for the control horn for the rudder. So if you make sure that's lined up over and above anything else. And then you can bring everything else together, like so. Just making sure that's lined up. Yep, there we go. Perfect. And it's following the line, the leading edge of the rudder down there. That's fine. So we can now pop that to one side, let everything cure nicely, and then we can start bringing it together on the fuselage itself. So the first part that I'm going to attach is going to be the vertical stabilizer. Now you've got a slot that runs down through the fuselage that this should sit into. What I'm going to do is, in fact, I'm going to pinch that. So I'm actually going to induce a little bit of a taper, which should help us to pop it into place. We'll do a dry fit first, just to make sure everything lines up. So what I'm looking for is obviously this back edge to get as close to the trailing edge of the horizontal stabilizer as possible. That looks to be good, but might benefit from going back a little bit further. So I'm just going to gently put gently. And cut through the Tyvek at the rear, just to allow the vertical stabilizer to go back a little bit further. There we go. So that's sitting nicely like that. I can eyeball it to make sure that it's perpendicular as well. So happy with that. So all I have to do, extract it, add a little bit of glue and pop it in place, let it dry. A little glue on the tab and to the bottom edge, like so, and then we'll pop it in place wet, and it can take its time to cure. So let's just make sure. Okay. Perfect. That looks good. Right, pop that to one side, and we'll let that dry, and we'll start adding our other parts to the equation. Right. Elevator. Make sure the slot for the control horn is on the underside. Easier to do with the Militaire because obviously it's also yellow on the underside, camouflage on top. And this literally sits in that position, but the tabs need to go in between the two halves of the horizontal stabilizer. I'm just going to make sure we've got the area where the tabs are going to go, the hinge tabs are going to go, just opened up. I'm just popping the knife. I'm trying not to use the blade side itself, just the back side of the knife, just to make sure we've got a room opened up for those hinges to slot through into, like so. And then just add a small amount of glue to each tab. And before it dries, slide it in. There we go. Once they're in, we're looking for about 1 millimeter between the two parts, and also obviously an even gap from the from left and right too. So we can obviously just check it's all operational whilst we're here. There we go. And then finally, on goes, well, say finally, there is another step after this, but the last part of the operational tail feathers is obviously getting this this part on too. Now the lower portion here should take the large hinge that's already on the fuselage. Just to make sure that it does, I'm going to pop the knife in there and just make sure everything is opened up, because obviously the plastic hinge on the fuselage is a double thickness too, rather than these ones which are single thickness. So just make sure that there's plenty of room for that hinge to go in, because it's quite large, because obviously it's supporting the tail wheel too. And then just make sure on the vertical stabilizer that we have enough wiggle room to get our hinges in. It seems like I got a little bit of glue, a little bit too far up the this part here. So I'm just using the blade here just to loosen that up. The other thing I could do is just put a drop of the lighter fluid in there if I wanted. But I'm just taking my time. No need to rush. Just make sure we've got the room available, and then I'm going to pop a little bit of glue on the front edge of the gap there, that hopefully the hinge will drag into the gap, and then just make sure my hinge lines are vertical, and then just a tiny blob of glue on each of those tabs. So here we go. Go up a bit. We've got our required gap. Everything moves as it should. Yep. Well, that all looks good. Super. So tail feathers are on. The glue will set, and we can leave it alone. There's one last piece to go on, and this is more decorative than anything else. But P25, which is just a little plastic piece. Go. This actually is designed to hold the comms aerial. Just a sort of a little scale-like detail to pop on the aircraft. So literally, you fold in the two, or the two parts that have got the hole through. They need to come together, and the triangular pieces should flare out, and they're going to sit either side of the top of the tail there, and then you can just attach it to whatever you want, really, within reason. But I'm just going to add a little bit of glue onto there so we can bring it all together, and then we can put a piece of thread or cotton or whatever you like to use between the it's not an aerial, forget what they call it, but the bit that goes just behind the cockpit, which can then hold the wire. You can string it between there and the tail. So let's bring those two. I don't know if you can see that. I've brought the two parts that are hinged or scored together, pinched them together, but I've left the two triangular bits splayed so that we can fit that either side of the tail. So let's just do that now. Just pop that on there, like so. And there we have our tail feathers complete. So, thank you ever so much for watching this episode 6, I think it was, or is. Hope your build is going as well as mine is. And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching.